2023 was filled with some mighty fine books, but the question is, which ones are worth your time? Which ones should you be picking up in 2024? And because my opinion is the correct answer and there's no variation on my opinion from the objective truth of what makes a book good, we're going to tier rank all the books I read in 2023. Now, I think this is going to be difficult because I read a lot of good books. Really not looking forward to ranking the Dungeon Crawler Carl books because they're all so good. I am a pretty slow reader, so I only read 29 books in 2023, which is pretty good for me. I kind of average it about 30, sometimes just over, sometimes just under. If I realised it was at 29, I might have fit in a novella or something just to bump that number up. I hadn't realised that I was sitting right on the cusp. First up, we have A Pilgrimage of Swords. Now, this is a novella by Anthony Ryan, and I really enjoyed this. It was a really great, fun little adventure. I had a ton of interesting world building, had some really interesting characters, and I did like the sort of quest they went on and all the different settings that we got to cross. It does a lot of what I love about fantasy. So I'm going to put that in. I'm going to put in This Was Great just now. I really did enjoy that. And because they are novellas, they're really good at fitting in between these bigger reads. So I do plan on continuing the series and maybe finishing it this year because they are just novellas. Next up, we have House of Blades by Will White. Now, this was his debut book and it has some really cool world building as well. But what really got me with this book was the titular House of Blades itself. It was so much fun. It was like a progression fantasy. This young boy has to complete a room before getting onto the next room and the next room, and it's all these different quirky characters that you meet in each room and all these different antagonists that are trying to train him up. There's actually these ghouls that go about, I can't remember their name, that roam around the house and just at random times try and kill the participants who live there because they need to stay on their toes. So it's a really cool idea, and the best part was in the House of Blades. I enjoyed this for now. Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England was the second book from the year of Sanderson, his 4 secret projects. Now for me, this was the weakest of the 4. I did really enjoy it still, but just didn't have the same draw to it because the main character has amnesia and he can't remember a lot of his life. Out with this story, it does leave him as kind of this blank slate character as he's trying to figure out his own past. I do like how it all kind of played out, and it was really an entertaining read. It just didn't grab me like a classic Sanderson book does. So because of that, I'm going to put it in, yeah, it was okay. Neon Ghost, A Witch's Sin from YouTube's own Daniel Green. This book was really, really cool. Cyberpunk with vampires in this mega structure. There was so much to it that was just really cool. I love what Daniel did with the main character. I think his portrayal and delving into the theme of grief was done really, really well. And if a book has good world building and I get attached to the main character, I'm pretty much sold on the book. I did really, really enjoy it. I did have some gripes, but also I just enjoyed spending time in this world with this character. So for that, I'm going to put it in, I enjoyed this, probably top of I enjoyed this, because it was really, really good, and I cannot wait for the sequel. And I believe we might be getting a prequel novella in the same series too, so I'm excited for that. I Am AI. Now this was a complete surprise, and it just blew me away how good it was, how much emotion the author could pack into such a small little novella. There's so much to this story, and it can be interpreted in different ways. Part of the reason why I don't want to talk about it too much, because I think different people will get different things from the same story, and in my eyes that does make it just a really special story. So because of that, I'm going to put it in This Was Great. I think I like Pilgrimage of Swords a little bit more. I'm going to leave it there just now. I might move it later. Tress of the Emerald Sea, the first book in the year of Sanderson. This was a really fun book. This was something that we haven't got from Sanderson before, this sort of fairy tale story and the fairy tale-esque prose style. It was just really interesting to see this from Sanderson, and I do hope he revisits this style of prose and also this idea of Hoyd telling stories in the Cosmere. It was really, really cool. It was great. I'm going to put it up in yes! Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is so difficult for me to rate. I still don't know how I feel about it. and I read it like 6 months ago. One thing I really liked was the prose style. It's super punchy and just on point. You can tell R.F. Kuang really is a master at writing, which makes me really excited to delve into her fantasy stuff, because this was the first book I've read from R.F. Kuang. I just kind of wanted more from this story. There was kind of this thriller aspect that maybe hinted at going down a different route that I was kind of hoping for, and that kind of just got brushed aside at the end. I feel like it set up and promised things that it didn't deliver on. However, I still had a fun time with it, so I'm going to put it in, yeah, it was okay, but above Frugal Wizards. Harbinger of Justice, perhaps the finest thing put to paper. I just put in here to say, hey, I wrote a book, you should go buy it. It's dark fantasy, ancient Egyptian inspired, has some cool world building stuff in it, mental health rep, and the sequel's coming out this year, as well as a prequel novella that's dropping in summer, so what better time to read it? Okay, I've done my pitch now. Back to the video. Oh no, the first Dungeon Crawler Carl book. Should we really do these in order? Nah, I'll just do them how they come. The Gate of the Feral Gods. Now this was book 4, and book 4 was really, really good. I think I'm in the minority. Most people seem to prefer book 3 over book 4, but I thought book 4 was just a little bit better. It pulled in a bunch of aspects I loved from the 3 different books that we had before then. Some of the humor from book 1 that we kind of didn't get as much of in book 2 and 3 came back in tenfold. This sort of in-world narrative stuff that we got in book 2 was brought over to book 4, and this sort of mystery elements that we got a lot of in book 3 was carried across as well. And on top of that, we got a lot more development over this A story of this political game show and a lot of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, particularly with the epilogue. The epilogue was so... So this is going up the top. Next we have Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Now this, I did a full video on it. It is a weird book. It is about the small village that is getting haunted by spirals. Some of the chapters are kind of funny just because they're so over the top and out there. I did have a good time reading this, but I didn't overly connect to it. So I'm going to put it in the bottom of I enjoyed this. I think I like House of Blades a little bit more because of that house section. That was really good. Next up we have Jade War, the second book in the Green Bone saga. Now, part of my problem with this book was I went in with expectations that this was going to size up to this huge war between these clans, and there's going to be lots of fights and this sort of big cataclysmic pull together of all these different factions and things going on. However, this wasn't that. This remained a very political conversation, machinations behind the scenes type story, which is great and I really enjoyed. Very character led, which is one of the things I look for in a book. But it's just the fact that the title was Jade War, I went in with the expectations of it being something that it wasn't. So at the time I was like, this is not what I signed up for. But the longer I sit on it, the more I enjoyed this story. I really do love the characters in this book. I'm going to put the top of this is great because I really did enjoy it a lot. Network Effect, the first full book in the Murderbot Diaries, the ending, the way it pulled everything together. Oh, so well done, so well done. I'm going to put it above Tress, but not quite as much as Dungeon Crawler Carl, because I love those books. I love those books so much. Next up, we have the Combat Codes. Now, this book is just fun. There are some twists and turns that as soon as they were revealed, I thought I should have figured that out. But I'm an idiot, so I didn't. It has me so excited for the sequel. I really need to pick up the sequel soon. I'm going to put this just under Jade War. I think I prefer Jade War just because I can connect more to the characters. But Combat Codes, so much fun. I love that. From Cold Ashes Risen, the third book in the War Eternal series, following Eska, who is one of my favourite characters in fantasy. Book 2 and 3, The Lessons Never Learned, and From Cold Ashes Risen are very much smooshed together in this kind of joint story. I feel like Along the Razor's Edge kind of stands as an introduction, then 2 and 3 are kind of clumped together as the second branch of the story. That's how it feels like to me when I read it. But I think that also lent into book 3 being a better experience because it did just kick off and I read them back to back. Did I enjoy it more or less than Combat Codes? I think less than Combat Codes. And I'm going to put Lessons Never Learned. Okay, I might put you there. I think That's how I want it. Yeah, I'll leave it like that for now. The book that wouldn't burn. Now this completely blew me away with how deep it went into its themes, how clever the writing and how it pieced together these two narratives in this library, and some of the world building around it is fascinating. See, the problem is with combat codes is it's just so much fun. I think I'm going to put it there. The Sword of Kaigen. Now this is often referred to as the best fantasy book of all time. And now I can see why. The characters are incredible. It reminds me a lot of the Greenbone saga with some of the family dynamics in this kind of more political overstory. I am going to post a full video with my full thoughts of my reading experience of it, so I don't want to go too deep, but overall I loved it. It was really, really good. So I'm going to put it up in, yes, maybe just under Murderbot. I love Murderbot. A Sam for the Wild Bill is a novella, and I really liked so many aspects to the story. I love the world building, I love the main character, I love the robot that we meet, I love the idea of this story. There was just so many things in the execution that just didn't work for me at all. There were so many small details that just completely pulled me out, that just weren't believable. It just didn't do it for me. I still liked it, and I thought the ending was really good, but there was just a lot that just didn't work for me. Dungeon Crawler Carl, Book 1. Now this is really difficult to review because it just surprised me so much. It was just so out there and bizarre that I got completely caught up in the world and the narration and just the story and just the ludicrousy of it, that I had so much fun that I kind of turned off everything critical in my head and just went, I love it, it's perfect. And I know it's not perfect, but it just worked so well for me at that point when I listened to it. I'm going to put below Book 4, which might be a controversial take in the Dungeon Crawler Carl fandom. They're all amazing. It's like trying to pick a favorite child. You just can't do it. Next up we have Isla's Reach. Now this is a very classic fantasy feeling story, but then it has a lot of dark twists. I'm still not over. It's a difficult one to talk about because there is so much to the story that I don't want to ruin. I think there. Assassin's Apprentice. I started my Hobb journey in 2023. This book, oh boy, it's an experience. I really enjoyed it. I think I went in with tempered expectations because a lot of people say this first book isn't the strongest. And Hobb knows how to ruin your day. She is so mean to Fitz, and I hate it, but I also love it. So because of that, we're going to put it in, I think I enjoyed it. It's kind of on a par with Sword of Kaigen for me. Both, they're very different stories, but they do have similarities. They're on a par. I'm going to put Assassin's Apprentice at the front, but they're the same. They're on the same level. I can't pick between them. No. Next up, we have The Emperor's Soul, which is also another novella in Sanderson's bigger Cosmere. This is often referred to as one of his strongest pieces, and I can see that. There was a lot to this story that was really entertaining. Of course, world building, amazing. It's a Sanderson book. And it is nice to have this shorter, encapsulated tale that's not necessarily connected to lots of other things in the Cosmere. You can start with The Emperor's Soul. So I had a good time with it. I think I'm going to put it there. Next up, we have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. It's funny, this was my most anticipated of the 4 secret projects because I did read all these sample chapters he put out at the end of 2022. This was the one that I was like, I think I'm gonna like this. This sounds really, really good. And it was my favorite of the 4, so I called it. Sanderson is so good at tying all his different elements to his stories together, and the way that he weaves them all together, this sort of synergy on how they act off each other and how they all come together at the end. And I think this is a perfect example of how he does that. I think I'm going to put it there because I flew through it and it was a really entertaining, fun read and had a lot of really good elements. And I think there was less that I would complain about in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I will say Assassin's Apprentice and Sword of Kaigen gave me more of an emotional reaction, but just as a read as it is, that's not the story that Yumi was trying to tell, so I think there's fair. Sunlit Man was really, really good. It follows a character that we know from Stormlight. It was a good story, had really interesting world building. I don't know why I need to mention that every time we talk about Sanderson, because it should be a given at this point. Sunlit Man appeals to my taste more, but Tress was just such a unique reading experience. Yeah, I think we're going to leave it like that. In fact, I could probably put that down in there. It was great. It didn't blow my mind, but it was great. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. Long Chosen Case, though, this is a difficult one to talk about because it is an old story from Sanderson. It's not something new. It's not something he's written recently. It's a very unique little story. It's something a little different, but it's undeniably Sanderson in the way that it is structured and some of the things within the story itself. The prose style is very different. He's going for this sort of noir feel. It still was a fun story. It's just not one I'm probably going to revisit. Bookshops and Bone Dust. Now this is the prequel to Legends and Lattes. There were some elements to the story that I enjoyed more than Legends and Lattes. The character work with Viv and some of the main side characters were really, really well done. So I'm going to put it there. Actually, I think I enjoyed Uzumaki more than House of Blades. Let's do that. Next up, we have Shadow Casket, the sequel to The Ember Blade. Now this is another one where I can understand why people were disappointed with it. The Ember Blade is terrific, and I still think Ember Blade is the better book. But I just love these characters so much, and the ending, oh boy, the ending to Shadow Casket was brutal. The character arcs and this huge cast, and they all had really well, apart from one, they all but one had really satisfying ends to their character arcs. It was so good. I love the side characters. I love the main characters. I love the plot. I love the world. I love the writing style. Grub is the best. Grub Club, one of my favorite side characters of all time. So because of that, I'm going to put it up above Tress. And the last two books is Dungeon Crawler Carl Book 2, Carl's Doomsday Scenario, and Book 3, The Anarchist's Cookbook. Both were great, but I preferred 3 over 2. I don't know where I'm going to put them in with this, though. This is, maybe like that? I think that needs to go there. I should probably lock this in, but this is really tough. I think that's it. I feel like this top line could be interchangeable. This whole section here could be interchangeable depending on my mood. It's so difficult. I'm just gonna go with it. That's what I think. It's on paper now. It's been decided. Let me know in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What did you think? You can also tell me in what ways am I wrong. Probably many. I feel like there's some controversial opinions in there. Also some opinions that I feel like I could feel differently on a different day. But the fact that I don't know what to put as my top books is a good problem to have. And fingers crossed that 2024 will be equally as difficult to pick. And a huge thank you to my patrons who keep this channel alive. Over there is bonus videos, writing snippets of whatever I'm working on, and you also get to pick what books and then vote on what we read for the monthly book club. So thank you again, your support is huge. But thank you very much for watching. Outro really is so tough to pick.